Organized gang stalking. What you need to know. Organized gang stalking, also known as gang stalking, cause stalking, organized vigilante stalking, stalking by proxy, community-based harassment, and covert war, are essentially harassment and discrediting campaigns waged against a targeted individual. Citizens and neighbors are recruited to participate, often from extremist groups and cults, but also from among employees. Coordinated psychological warfare attacks, consisting of stalkings, noise campaigns, sensitizing and the spreading of lies and rumors, are executed in an effort to virtually neutralize and destroy the victim using people from all backgrounds and vocations to harass, track 24/7, sometimes organizing lethal vehicle accidents, poisonings, electronic harassment, corrupt or ignorant doctor diagnosis given to stamp the victim as bogus, mentally ill with delusions, paranoid, or schizophrenia, etc. Everything is done covertly and with a sophisticated real-time dispatching system to organize the criminals' harassments and attacks, often in the hundreds to thousands of criminals participating as a coordinated mob at any given time while the criminals do their normal routines of work, shopping, commuting to and from work, leisure, etc., using the method of moving foot and vehicular surveillance techniques, and computers, cell phones, verbal and visual cues, and every other conceivable type of communication. Often, the local network of this mob is connected to a national and international network. When the target travels, the local network will follow the target to the next city or town. When the target arrives there, the network in that location will stalk, follow and harass the target in that city or town. Organized gang stalking, also known as organized stalking, community harassment. Community stalking is a systemic form of control, which seeks to destroy every aspect of a targeted individual's life. Using occupational health and safety laws, warning markers can be added to a target's file. Once a target is flagged, a notification is sent out, and the target is followed around 24/7 by the various communities that they are in. A covert, usually bogus and illegal investigation might be opened, an electronic means used by the civilian spies as part of the covert monitoring and surveillance process. The citizen informants can be parts of these community-oriented programs, but are often just average citizens. Everyone in the target's life is contacted, advised as to why the individual has been listed or flagged, and advised not to discuss the notification and asked to be a part of the ongoing, never-ending monitoring systemic harassment process. This process is covertly designed to destroy the target over time, leaving them with no form of support. Since most civil workers are aware of this notification system, it means that targets reporting incidents of being followed around by various strangers should not have been unfamiliar to the police and other agencies that targets reported their harassment to. In most cities, this notification is well known and used by many workers and employers. Yet targeted individuals have had to have mental health evaluations for making complaints about this structure and the harassment that comes with it. Organized gang stalking is experienced by the targeted individual as a psychological attack that is capable of immobilizing and destroying them over time. The covert methods used to harass, persecute, and falsely defame the targets often leave no evidence to incriminate the civilian spies. It's similar to workplace mobbing, but takes place outside in the community. It's called organized stalking because organized groups or community members stalk and monitor the targets 24/7. See gang stalking. Organized stalking. Organized gang stalking questions and answers. Does the word gang, as in organized gang stalking, refer to street gangs? No. The word gang refers to multiple people who group together for a common purpose. What is the difference between stalking, by a single perpetrator, and organized gang stalking? All forms of stalking are physically, emotionally, and psychologically harmful to the victim. With regards to organized gang stalking, the abuse is particularly invasive as the victim is not able to distinguish friend from foe. The majority of the population is aware of cases such as jilted lover as stalker, and can readily identify key features of such abuse. The little-known phenomena of organized gang stalking allows the perpetrator's anonymity and enables future victimizations, as stalkers are actually encouraged by the lack of repercussions. Please keep in mind that victims of organized gang stalking have to deal with an abuse engineered to make them appear insane should they complain to authorities. It is no wonder that victims of organized gang stalking are far more likely to commit suicide than victims of individual stalkers. Is organized gang stalking illegal? Yes. Despite what the leaders or members of stalking and harassment groups say or believe, all forms of stalking and harassment are illegal. Stalking definition. Stalking can be defined as a pattern of repeated and unwanted attention, harassment, contact, or any other course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to feel fear. Stalking is against the law in every state. Stalking across state lines or in federal territories is illegal under federal law. A willful course of conduct involving repeated or continuing harassment of another individual that would cause a reasonable person to feel terrorized, frightened, intimidated, threatened, harassed, or molested, and that actually causes the victim to feel terrorized, frightened, intimidated, threatened, harassed, or molested. A person who intentionally and repeatedly follows or harasses another person and who makes a credible threat, either expressed or implied, with the intent to place that person in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily harm is guilty of the crime of stalking. Harassment definition. Harassment means conduct directed toward a victim that includes, but is not limited to, repeated or continuing unconsented contact that would cause a reasonable individual to suffer emotional distress and that actually causes the victim to suffer emotional distress. The goal of organized gang stalking. The express goal of organized gang stalking is to silence a victim, drive a victim insane and possibly to the point of suicide, or destroy the victim's reputation and believability, as the person will likely be viewed as mentally ill should they complain or report the abuse. To cause the target to appear mentally unstable is one, and this is achieved through a carefully detailed assault using advanced psychological harassment techniques, and a variety of other tactics that are the usual protocol for gang stalking, such as street theater, mobbing, pervasive petty disrespecting. Organized gang stalking is also used to gather information on individuals as well as force individuals to move or leave an area. Do the stalkers ever question or check to see if a targeted victim is indeed guilty of a crime? No. There is an assumption of guilt among the stalkers. Also, remember that many stalkers are paid for their harassment, so these individuals are not concerned with the innocence or guilt of a victim. Assuming a victim knows the group that is behind their stalking, should they attempt to openly communicate with them? Absolutely not. For one, the stalkers automatically assume the victim is guilty of an atrocity, and thus deserves the treatment. Second, many stalkers actually want the victim to engage them in some fashion. In these instances, the interaction will be recorded and used as evidence against the victim, especially in attempts to suggest the victim is mentally unstable. If a charitable and respectable society practices organized gang stalking on the side, should we assume the victims deserve such treatment? Absolutely not. When people take the law into their own hands, any notion of law is destroyed altogether. I should emphasize that the majority of organized gang stalking victims are completely innocent of any crimes. Any group that performs organized gang stalking is not positive in nature, nor beneficial to society, despite any charitable works they may perform. Likewise, such societies only remain respectable because any and all evidence of wrongdoing is conveniently destroyed or eliminated. Motivations for the abuse. Motivations for organized gang stalking vary. Revenge for a real or imagined offense, true or false accusations of a horrible crime of which the victim has gotten away with, silencing a corporate whistleblower, defecting from a cult, a perceived enemy of a group or organization, and knowing too much are all examples of possible motivations. Due consideration should be used as the motivations of the stalking and harassment groups are in no way limited to the above. Who are the stalkers? The stalkers, for the most part, are everyday citizens. Other stalkers are street thugs who have been recruited or hired to harass and intimidate. Some stalkers are actual private investigators who have been hired to gather information concerning the victim. Many stalkers are members of volunteer police groups. Why people participate in gang stalking. Some stalkers are told lies, either positive or negative in nature, in order to gain their participation. Some stalkers are paid or receive other benefits. Stalkers belonging to an organization may simply be following orders. Some stalkers may use their participation in order to repay a past favor. Racism, prejudice, anti-Semitism, homophobia, or otherwise hatred of a victim, peer pressure and need to fit in. Former stalkers have stated they participated out of fear of becoming the next target should they go against the group. Entertainment value, thrill of participation in an illegal activity. Some stalkers mistakenly believe it is their civil duty. Who, or what, is ultimately behind gang stalking? Corporations, government organizations, military, secret societies, fraternities, orders, religious cults and destructive New Age groups, concerned community groups, vigilante groups, criminal organizations, volunteer police organizations, etc. Examples of organized gang stalking: harassment, slash tires, threatening phone calls, verbal assaults by strangers, property damage, death threats, following on foot or by vehicle, bizarre notes and drawings left, loitering, anonymous false accusations to friends, family, and neighbors, character assassination, smear campaigns, blacklisting, psychological abuse, etc. Tactics and methods used by these organized stalking and harassment groups. The following techniques are several types that are often used against targeted individuals. There are other techniques used, but these are some of the primary ones. Anchoring. Anchoring is a technique employed by stalkers to implant a false motivation or reason behind the stalking, preventing the victim from discovering the truth. In more sinister examples, anchoring involves the implantation of evidence to persuade the victim some other group or organization is responsible for the abuse. In organized gang stalking, anchoring is used to make the target have fear with things happening in your daily life that is considered to be normal. That can be done with frequent demonstrations. The key is the frequency, just like other organized gang stalking methods. For example, people show you a pen everywhere you go, and their attitude is rude or crazy against you. You don't know them, you just wonder what's going on. Imagine that happens every day, for a week, for a month, for a year, then, that makes you have fear with a pen. In this case, a pen is anchored with your state of fear. It can be anything. An open car door or trunk, a pencil, a cell phone, notebook, computer, a medical mask, clothes of the same color, anything. Every time I go somewhere during the day, an anchoring threat is made by car or truck with the doors or trunk open, and no one in it sitting in someone's driveway along my route. This is a sign to get out. Air stalking. This is when helicopters or planes are used to track, stalk, and harass targets that are on foot, or in cars. They fly overhead and follow the targets from one location to the next. Some will monitor the targets shortly after they leave their homes. Baiting entrapment. The term baiting is a stalking tactic used to lure a victim into environments, or situations, which cause further problems to the victim. Often baiting involves tricking a victim into committing a crime or unknowingly engaging in an illegal activity. To lure into dangerous, difficult, or compromising situations. Members of these organized stalking and harassment groups will try to lure targets into various situations for the sole purpose of setting them up. Setting up targets could involve getting them arrested, institutionalized, set up on fake sexual harassment charges, drug charges, illegal pornographic materials, etc. Once this happens, it puts targets at risk for entrapment into becoming members themselves. Brighting. Brighting is shining or flashing bright headlights on targets as targets walk on the street, usually at night. Members of these organized gang stalking will turn on their high beams. This might be flashed once or twice at targets. This might be used to let targets know they are being watched. However, these signals might also be a way for informants in cars at night to communicate with their fellow counterparts. The foot patrols will then communicate back to the informant in the car, using a combination of hand signals. You will see members of these groups riding around during the day with their headlights or high beams on. The victim is usually followed and may be flashed from either a tailgating vehicle or a passing or oncoming one. Brighting also occurs when bright lights are flashed into a victim's home windows. Car accidents. Targeted individuals complain about being cut off, driven off the road, and near fatal or fatal car accidents. Pedestrian targets complain about cars that consistently cut them off, being hit by cars, and other almost near mishaps. Crowding and mobbing. When the target is in public, members of these organized gang stalking groups will usually try to box the target in. Example: they will surround the target in a square-like formation if possible. They will stand too close to the target, or swarm them. Quote, "We experienced being mobbed by vehicles from CTNY and NJ at the beginning of our trip. Some of the gang stalkers were couples with their children along. Some smirked at us and showed weapons to us through their windows." Color harassment. Color harassment is literally the use of color to harass a victim. Usually, monochromatic color schemes are used, though this choice is pretty much up to the members of the organized stalking and harassment groups. An example of color harassment would be a line of stalkers, in red shirts, circling a victim. Color harassment is often combined with other stalking tactics. Convoy. Convoy is a tactic of stalkers referring to the practice of a group of tailgating cars passing repeatedly in front of the home of a victim. Vehicles used may be of the same color, and stalkers may honk the car horn or flash the car headlights as they pass. Cyber stalking. Cyber stalking is a related group of harassing behavior occurring via internet online. Cyber stalking includes, but is not limited to, computer hacking, trolling, spamming, often including porn deluges, verbal assaults, character assassination, and impersonations of the victim. Directed conversations. Directed conversation is a term referring to a stalking tactic using strangers' conversation to both intimidate and to convey to the victim that they are under surveillance. During directed conversation, two or more stalkers will approach near to the target and engage in normal conversation with one another. The conversation is purposefully made at a level so that the victim can adequately hear what is being said. During directed conversation, personal information concerning the victim is inserted into the speech and emphasized by the stalkers in a fashion that most non-victims would not be able to discern as harassment. The purpose of directed conversation is to harass a victim, as well as make the victim appear mentally unstable should they attempt to complain about such abuse. These are conversations that complete strangers will have out in public relating to the target and their personal situations. Example: they will repeat things a target said in their home, or on the phone. They will drop very personal details into the conversation that could only be related to the target. Example: member number 1. "It's a shame Uncle Ed won't be able to come." Member number 2. "Yeah, since he died golfing on Saturday." The target will just have learned of a death of a favorite uncle, possibly named Ed, while out golfing. Electronic harassment. Electronic harassment is the use of technological devices to spy on or cause harm to targeted victims. For example, exposure to a high magnetic field has been shown to induce hallucinations in humans, while exposure to intense microwave radiation induces psychotic episodes and causes brain damage. A frequent form of electronic harassment involves beaming a low-frequency hum or tone into a victim's home or general area. Over time, the exposure causes the victim to lose sleep, become agitated, and suffer the effects of prolonged stress. Such tactics are also being used in cases of hostage situations as well as covert government operations. Electromagnetic weapons and frequencies will be used on a target on their homes. The purpose of using the EMF electromagnetic frequency on targets and their belonging are multifaceted. Electronic frequencies can destroy electronic equipment. Electronic frequencies can be used for monitoring and tracking inside the home, and at work. It can also be used for purposes of sleep disturbance. When those conducting these covert investigations feel that they have psychologically destroyed the target to where they are near breakdown, they will start to use these weapons. They will also use these weapons if targets are not going along with their harassment protocol. Electronic harassment and.wikipedia.org web link. Michigan legislature acknowledges the existence of harmful electromagnetic devices. www.targetedindividuals.com web link. Nervous systems / also see Dr. John Hall satellite terrorism in the United States. Fake credibility reports. Fake credibility reports are being used to subtly discredit and attack legitimate websites regarding organized gang stalking, including the Gang Stalking World website, under the guise of doing good for the community. www.gangstalkingworld.com. Files. It has been indicated that targets will have warning markers placed against their files. The information is then shared with relatives, storekeepers, friends, and the community at large. The files are usually not left behind, but they are used to prejudice and slander individuals against the target. These files can be used to engender the corporation of friends and associates of the targets. The files might have a picture of the target, and information about some alleged crime, incidents, that the target has been flagged for, or is under investigation for. The information is usually very convincing and helps to further get targets harassed by those around them. The most important thing about these files are that they are usually fake. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological technique used by members of these groups. The purpose of gaslighting is to make a victim question his or her sanity, doing little things to try to make the target think that they are going crazy. Gaslighting simply is trying to convince someone that they are crazy or imagining things. Example: if you mention organized gang stalking to someone who knows about it and they tell you you're crazy or paranoid, they are gaslighting you. The term gaslighting originates from the 1944 film Gaslight. In the movie, the character of Gregory Anton, played by actor Charles Boyer, attempts to drive the character Pauline, played by actress Ingrid Bergman, insane. The phrase gaslighting has come to mean similar actions and behavior, as used in the film, Against a Victim 1944 Gaslight starring Ingrid Bergman. Ghosting. The term ghosting refers to the practice of rearranging, or moving, of a victim's home furniture, lawn decorations, desk decorations at work, etc. The purpose of ghosting is to make a victim question his or her sanity. Ghosting is also designed to make others question the sanity of the victim, especially if the victim attempts to complain of the abuse. Gestures. Hand gestures such as intentionally touching hand to face or bringing fist or hand to face while around person being targeted. Arm gestures. Members of these organized stalking and harassment groups repeatedly driving by a person who is being targeted or their home holding their arms out of their vehicle windows, usually in an unnatural position. Again, the idea behind this harassment is to get the target or victim sensitized to these gestures, so that the target or victim can be openly harassed around their home or while out in public. The individuals who do this have already been sensitized to these gestures themselves. Illegal surveillance. This involves setting up audio and some visual surveillance of the target that is usually illegal, bugging the target's phone. Surveillance in the target's residence, listening to cell phone and hardline conversations. Hacking into their computers and learning all about what the target is doing, sites they frequent, or planting things. This also helps to build a profile of the target, and it's also used for later psychological attacks against the target. Mimicry. Mimicry or mirroring is a specialized form of harassment in which the stalkers publicly imitate every movement made by the victim. This is trying to copy things in a target's life. Leaving when they do. Dressing like they dress. Throwing out the garbage. Going to the bathroom, doing whatever the target is doing. This is all designed to be psychological warfare, so that the target again feels like they are under observation at all times. Mobbing. Mobbing is a term that describes group bullying. Of itself, mobbing is not equated with organized gang stalking. However, mobbing may be a tactic used by the perpetrators of gang stalking. Mobbing. Noise harassment campaign. A noise harassment campaign is an orchestrated effort to produce stress in a victim through prolonged exposure to significant noise levels. A noise campaign can range from multiple neighbors routinely playing loud music, individual stalkers with air horns or fireworks, or organized repair work that involves a high level of noise. This will include anything from loud vehicles, loud mufflers, doors slamming above you and below you, garbage disposal, slamming doors, hammering, intentionally slamming car doors loudly, loud stereos, stopping at specific times, loud coughing, pot slamming, water running, cupboard doors being slammed, fridge motor running all night, power tools, etc. Sensitization. Sensitization is a psychological term referring to the forced association between a stimuli and a corresponding reaction. Members of these groups use sensitization to psychologically abuse a victim. For example, if a stalker constantly harasses a victim while wearing a blue baseball cap, then over time the victim will begin to believe anyone wearing a blue baseball cap is a stalker and is coming to harass. Sensitization. This is getting targets sensitive to an everyday stimuli. Example: colors, patterns or everyday actions. Example: red, stripes, pens, whistles, loud coughing, clapping, waves, keys jingling. Example: Joe will be mobbed at work, and as part of that daily mobbing his coworkers will loudly cough at him every time they harass him by calling him names like loser, worthless, lame, demented. They will slander him and have others as they are slandering him show disgust by glaring and coughing at him. Out in public they will follow him loudly and obnoxiously coughing at him. When he goes to stores they will get others to do the same. After months or years of this, Joel has become sensitive to the stimuli and it can be used to harass him without the names and the glaring looks. The association has been formed because of all the other harassment. Example: a girl is sexually assaulted and a sock is shoved in her mouth during the assault. To keep her quiet or stop her from pressing charges, the assailant, his friends and family will follow her around and throw socks in her path, mention it everywhere she goes and show her their socks every chance they get. She will get the message they are sending. Because of the brutal attack, she and what's happened after she is now sensitized. Sensitization undoubtedly creates an extreme level of fear in the victim, in direct fulfillment of the intentions of the stalkers. Street theater. Street theater is a term used to describe the odd actions and behaviors that stalkers, sometimes neighbors, do in public, in an attempt to rile the victim. Such behavior often borders on the extremely bizarre and is aimed at a blurring of the boundaries between reality and fantasy in the minds of the victims. This is running into people that are acting very unusual, or people that are putting on a show or production, known as street theater. Example: this could be as minor as public rudeness, or people acting out a harassment skit. There will usually be someone nearby to see how you react to it. This is again looking for weakness or reactions. If you show an adverse reaction they will try to embellish on this and use it against you later on. Street theater is harassment skits done by strangers and neighbors who have been recruited into these stalking and harassment groups. Examples of street theater: baiting, brighting, color harassment, convoys, directed conversation, ghosting, mimicry, noise campaigns, etc. Synchronized harassment activities. Synchronized activities refers to the synchronized activities done by members of these groups to harass a target, which may include but not limited to neighbors arriving home at the same time or leaving home at the same time, or strangers or neighbors leaving or arriving home at the same time. Example: one neighbor leaves his or her house at the same time another neighbor arrives home. Example: 2. A neighbor arrives home and at the exact same time a complete stranger or pedestrian walks by a target's home. The synchronized activity is one of the main techniques used in harassing a target and is repeated. Example 3. A target leaves his or her home, at the exact same time a neighbor who has been recruited into the harassment leaves their home, followed by an airplane or helicopter flying overhead. The synchronized harassment will turn into a pattern and may include the use of numbers such as 2 neighbors arriving home at 3:13 and 2 other neighbors leaves their home at 3:30, the same neighbors arrives back home at 3:43. Synchronized harassment activities can be done with almost anything: neighbors arriving and exiting at the same time, aircraft flying overhead as neighbors are leaving or arriving home, harassment telephone calls made to the target's home just as neighbors who have been recruited into the harassment are leaving or arriving. The key to this is timing and frequency. The main motivation behind synchronized harassment activities is again that if the target complains about this type of harassment he or she may be perceived as mentally ill. How these stalking and harassment groups communicate. Signals and symbols. Communication happens in a number of ways. When on the street or in cars patrolling, they use baseball or Stasi-like signals. These include things like tapping the side of the nose, corner of the eye, brushing back the hair 3 times, the infamous double blink, etc. Members of these organized stalking and harassment groups will also communicate with each other on the street by using signals. Below are some examples. Signals for observation: 1. Watch out. Subject is coming, touch nose with hand or handkerchief. 2. Subject is moving on, going further, or overtaking, stroke hair with hand, or raise hat briefly. 3. Subject standing still, lay one hand against back, or on stomach. 4. Observing agent wishes to terminate observation because cover threatened, bend and retie shoelaces. 5. Subject returning, both hands against back, or on stomach. 6. Observing agent wishes to speak with team leader or other observing agents, take out briefcase or equivalent and examine contents. Slander. They will go behind the target's back and tell lies about them. Often the lies will consist of the target being into something illegal, or is someone dangerous, or just needs to be watched for some vague reason. Egg. That they will say the target is a prostitute, drug dealer, crazy, terrorist, racist, pedophile, etc. Sleep deprivation. Noise harassment campaigns depriving the target of sleep is a really good way of leaving the target stressed out. It's also a way of leaving them disoriented and functioning at less than 100%. Then the targets can be baited into reacting in public, or getting into a car accident. Telephone redirects. When you make a telephone call, get the name and ID of the person that you are speaking to. Covert, usually illegal investigations have redirected phone calls. This means that when you dial a number they will intercept that phone call and pretend to be the service or repair person you were trying to call. If you call the cable company, gas or phone company, be sure you know that it's actually them that you are speaking to. Also remember that telephone companies and other businesses are often infiltrated by these organized gang stalking and harassment groups and can be used to harass and cause the targeted individual problems. Wrong numbered calls. Targets will daily get wrong numbered calls. These can be automated or they can be persons pretending to be wrong numbered calls. Members of these groups will use this as a means to monitor and psychologically harass targets. They want to know where the target is at all times. Variations of gang stalking. Consumer stalking. Consumer stalking is harassment and abuse directed at a consumer who has either filed a complaint against a company, filed a lawsuit against a company, or who is made aware of illegal activity occurring within a company. Often companies will fund stalkers simply in an attempt to prevent the victim from filing a lawsuit, via using fear and intimidation tactics. Consumer stalking can also be used to describe certain illegal activities of debt collectors. Corporate stalking. The term corporate stalking refers to a particularly severe form of gang stalking, where a corporation actually provides funding toward the harassment and abuse of a targeted individual, usually someone who is a whistleblower, a perceived problem employee, or else an employee who has witnessed illegal activity occurring within the corporation. The most sinister, and downright evil, tactic used during corporate stalking is forcing the victim to see the company psychologist. In most cases, the company psychologist is made aware that the victim is a dissident and a threat that needs to be eliminated. A false diagnosis of general psychosis, schizophrenia, or other mental illness is made, as well as a recommendation of institutionalization. See corrupt company psychologist information, psychologistfix.net. Intimate infiltration. This is where members of these groups will go out of their way to get into a target's life. They will try to form friendships with targets. They will try to form intimate relationships with targets. They will get close to people that are affiliated with targets. Years before the target ever realizes they are targets, they will try to get into a target's life. Example: if they can't get into your life, but you have a best friend, their new significant other might just be a member of the group. The same goes for siblings and the people that enter their lives. Isolation. For this harassment to be successful, it's important to be able to isolate the target from friends, family members, co-workers and even spouses if they are not already involved in the harassment. To accomplish this isolation, many methods are used, included, but not limited to, slander, lies, fake files, sabotage, anything that will get the target into a situation where they have no support system. This is important for them to succeed. Profiling. Targets will be observed and profiled long before they ever become aware that they are targeted by this sort of harassment. Profiles will be created on targets by following them. Following people close to them. Breaking into their homes and going through their stuff. Listening to their calls. Hacking into their computers. Gathering information from friends and family. Seeing where they like to shop and eat. What are their weaknesses? What things do they like and dislike? What are their weaknesses? What things do they like and dislike? What can you bribe them with? What can you blackmail them with? How can you bully them? How can they best be controlled? This will all be used to put together a profile of the target and then to get them into situations for their detriment. Random encounters. This will be people on the street who you randomly and unexpectedly run into. It looks completely natural and it seems to be a random encounter. They might ask for your phone number after engaging you in conversation. Ask you out, or just ask you where you are going. Anything from small talk to lengthier conversations. All with the purpose of finding out something about you, or even just getting you to do something. Ruin relationships. When targets are in a relationship, the members of the organized gang stalking group will try to ruin that relationship. This could be friendships, family or significant others. If it's a romantic relationship, they will find out what your significant other likes and try to get them to cheat, or leave you. If it's a friendship, they will tell lies to come between you. The same goes for family. This is done so that targets will have no means of support, once they do realize that something is going wrong in their lives. When this mobbing continues out in the community, it is called organized stalking. Organized stalking is mobbing that takes place out in public. Deception using lies about the target appear to be the most common method used to get citizens to participate. Specifically, smear campaigns using bogus investigations. Furthermore, it is likely that they take advantage of existing federally sponsored mechanisms, such as Community Crime Watch or community policing organizations, senior citizens organizations, and religious groups, and use them as unsuspecting instruments in their retaliation campaigns. Many people across the country have reported being harassed by these community groups. Some of these people they're using think they're doing a community service. This is a very well-funded and organized service cult that is apparently condoned or even run by the state. The perpetrators of organized gang stalking are serious criminals who do great damage, and the acts done are very serious crimes by any measure. Organized gang stalking is a highly criminal campaign, one directed at a target individual, and one that aims to destroy an innocent person's life through covert harassments, malicious slander and carefully crafted and executed psychological assaults. Organized gang stalking deprives the targeted individual of their basic constitutional rights and destroys their freedom, setting a stage for the destruction of a person, socially, mental and physical, through a ceaseless assault that pervades all areas of a person's life. Organized gang stalking on foot tactics and methods. Following the target everywhere they go. Gathering information about the target. Where they shop, work, play, who their friends and family are. Getting close to the target, moving into the community or apartment where they live, across the street. Following the target. Mobbing or crowding the target in public restaurants or stores. Having directed conversations about the target, standing close to the target. Engaging the target in trivial conversations. Intentionally coughing at the target, repeatedly clearing throat, using gestures around the target, intentional staring, glaring, pointing, or whispering at the target. Jangling keys, jangling change, getting a target sensitized to sounds, colors, patterns, actions. Example: red, white, yellow, stripes, clicking pens, foot tapping. Noise harassment and mimicking campaigns. Disrupting the target's life, sleep with loud power tools, construction, stereos, door slamming, etc. Talking in public about private things in the target's life. Mimicking actions of the target. Basically letting the target know that they are in the target's life. Daily interferences, nothing that would be too overt to the untrained eye, but psychologically degrading and damaging to the target over time. Mass strangers doing things in public to annoy targets. These strangers might get text message to be at a specific time and place, and perform a specific action. It might seem harmless to these strangers, but it could be causing great psychological trauma for the target. Example: blocking target's path, getting ahead of them in line, cutting or boxing them in on the road, saying or doing things to elicit an angry response from targets, etc. Organized gang stalking vehicle tactics and methods. Following a target around in vehicles, tailgating the target's vehicle on the road, driving or creeping by the target's home, two vehicles intentionally passing the other vehicle by or in front of the target's home repeatedly. This is a type of street theater and psychological sensitization tactic that is intended to make the target appear crazy or mentally unstable if the target complains of this type of harassment. Driving by the target's home, revving engine loudly, blowing horns by the target's home. Loud repeated door slamming. Loud stereo systems. Harassment by vehicles with loud or squeaky parts such as loud mufflers, squeaky fan belts or loud intentional squeaky brakes. Leaving loud vehicles or motorcycles idling around a target's home used as a form of harassment. Pulling in on side streets by a target's home and setting or backing up, pulling up in the target's driveway. Reversing vehicles in front of the target's home. Vehicles or groups that travel in cells. The cells may use vehicle color harassment. Vehicle color harassment: using many vehicle cells of the same color to harass and sensitize the target to a certain color, for example sending or flooding the target's neighborhood with many white vehicles. This can be done subtly or all at once. For instance, a target may notice 8 white vehicles within 5 minutes driving by his or her home, or may see one white vehicle one right after the other driving by his or her home. This harassment and sensitization tactic can be done with any color. Vehicles driving by the target's home in convoys. The convoys may be of the same color or similar type vehicle. Members of the stalking and harassment group lined up in convoys along a target's route. Positioning long lines of traffic in front of the target. Car accidents that may be staged or set up involving the target. Swarming or surrounding the target's vehicle on the road. Driving at slow speeds in front of the target. Vehicles with vanity plates that may mean something personal to the target that is used to convey messages and harass the target while on the road. Psychological vehicle tactics such as shining high beam headlights on the target. Vehicles with one headlight on and the other headlight off. Vehicles with one headlight that is brighter than the other headlight. Vehicles with modified headlights that can be turned up into a spotlight to bright the target. Quotes. Eleanor White. We all know what it's like to be told to see a psychiatrist. It's not fun when you know this stuff is real. David Lawson. Author of Terrorist Stalking in America. A common ruse used by these groups is that they are a citizens group which assists the police, and the illusion is reinforced by the case files they carry, which are complete with photos of the target. In order to establish basis of operation, they will enlist the assistance of neighbors. Those who do not cooperate can be targeted, which includes harassment of their families and damage to their homes and vehicles. David Lawson. Author of Terrorist Stalking in America. Groups begin their operations with a sensitization program. When they talk on their cell phones, they will ask if a target has been sensitized. Sensitivity tactics which are used to make sure the target knows he is being watched. Groups will also communicate with the target. Most communication is done by group members who make statements as they rush away. Some statements involve threats against the target and / or his family. David Lawson. Author of Terrorist Stalking in America. The primary characteristic of cause stalking is that it is done by large groups of people. A target will always be followed, but he is unlikely to see the same stalkers very often. Many of these groups include hundreds of people. Group members will attempt to physically intimidate a target if they can, by standing very close. Swarming is a tactic which is also used. It involves totally surrounding a target so he cannot move. Staged events would include blockading a target's vehicle so he cannot get out of a parking lot. Staged events are used to prove the superiority of the group and they control the target's time. Teams will typically stand around a target, while he is paying for a purchase in a store, or sit near him in a restaurant. Terrorist stalking in America, David Lawson. The participation of firemen, city workers and utility company workers helps give group members an illusion of legitimacy and power. Groups take revenge. That revenge can take the form of assault on the target or damage to his property. Groups try to impose a system of rewards and punishments on their targets. Targeted individual quote. My neighbors participate in this harassment and stalking. They have been bribed with home repairs. Those who cannot be lied to or bribed are threatened or blackmailed. I experience noise campaigns such as horns, fire truck and ambulance sirens, and alarms going off the instant I walk out of my house and down my street. Typically there are convoys of vehicles driving down my street, a side street playing loud music, yelling and revving their engines as they pass my house day and night. Also, there has been ongoing noise harassment campaign construction on the houses surrounding mine. Targeted individual quote. Other forms of harassment I've noticed include sensitivity operations. These operations are a very big part of the harassment campaigns as reported by hundreds of targets across the nation. They are designed to capture the target's attention, and let them know they're being harassed and followed. Targeted individual quote. The goal is to get the target sensitized to very subtle triggers so that once they are sensitized they can be harassed openly in a public place. These sensitivity programs are based on a science called neuro-linguistic programming (NLP). Used ethically, NLP dissolves phobias, sometimes in a single session. These cults use this science in a destructive format. See the tactics section for a description of how groups use this science. People who participate in organized stalking will walk by me and say things such as fiddle you, fiddle up, fiddlehead, scumbag, or they'll mention something about my personal life. Of course this happens to many people, once in a while. Frequency and duration is the key. Targeted individual quote. It is likely that prior to the harassment campaign, these perpetrators used citizens' informants to help frame me in situations I was not aware of, pictures, testimony, complaints, etc. in an attempt to represent me in a very negative manner. I believe this because they're currently generating pressure on me via acquaintances and family, so these lies must be potent. I think a combination of lies and intimidation is at the heart of recruitment strategy. It is my belief that many of the people in my personal life are cooperating out of fear and have been given a gag order during the investigation. Some of these agencies have a documented history of including friends, family, and places of business in these harassment programs. See The War at Home, Brian Glick. This is basically a legal, mafia-style criminal network that operates outside of the law and has little accountability. Organized gang stalking. A short definition. Gang stalking is stalking by more than one person to a victim, usually involving community harassment, or the mob, using people from all backgrounds and vocations to harass, tracking 24/7, sometimes organizing lethal vehicle accidents, poisonings, electronic harassment, home invasions, property destruction, corrupt or ignorant doctor diagnosis given to stamp the victim as bogus, mentally ill with delusions, paranoid, or schizophrenia, etc. Everything is done covertly, and with a sophisticated real-time dispatching system to organize the criminals' harassments and attacks, often in the hundreds to thousands of criminals participating as a coordinated mob at any given time while the criminals do their normal routines of work, shopping, commuting to and from work, leisure, etc., using the method of moving foot and vehicular surveillance techniques, and computers, cell phones, verbal and visual cues, and every other conceivable type of communication. Often, the local network of this mob is connected to a national and international network. Targeted individual quote. The above happens constantly in stores that are not crowded, and out in public. This organized stalking group will have their members follow me into restaurants. They'll usually sit next to me and mention things about my personal life. This is done both to harass me and to try to evoke a sense of helplessness by not being believed if I were to tell someone about the harassment. This type of harassment is concealed to anyone else in the establishment. Some of the other patrons may recognize that something is not right with that group of people. This is probably because the tone, rhythm and volume of their conversations are not natural, they're rehearsed and artificial. It's almost like bad acting. Occasionally you'll even see other patrons looking over at them with an expression of what's wrong with those people. Personal information gathered by surveillance is used primarily for harassment. This has been well documented not only by countless targets, but also in books such as The War at Home, by Brian Glick, and Terrorist Stalking in America by David Lawson. These people also made their presence known while I was vacationing in Florida. This happened on both flights, as well as in several restaurants. These cults has met me in any state I visited so far. John Hall Drive Hall is author of A New Breed Satellite Terrorism in America, a book in which he boldly describes his personal experiences of being a target of the domestic terrorism covertly sweeping through the nation's communities. KENS5's Conger quotes Hall saying that targets are all voicing the same complaints: organized stalking, weird, electronic disturbances going on in their homes. This isn't stalking that's done by former spouse, or former boyfriend, or someone you know is disgruntled at you, but stalking that's done by a total strangers in an organized fashion. Dr. Hall said. Learning what TIs throughout the nation and beyond report when trying to learn why they are being precision targeted with military-grade weapons and kept under what constitutes extremist foot soldier surveillance. Dr. Hall alleges to have been targeted by the same groups as Verbeef, including fellow doctors and the Texas Medical Board, for blowing the whistle on the criminal activity. He then faced the standard white coat bogus diagnoses of probable delusional disorder and ordered psychiatric treatment that whistleblowers consistently report. Targeted individual Jonathan quote. They have performed all manner of hoaxes and tricks in attempt to freak me out and have me make outlandish reports to the police and have me diagnosed as mentally ill. I have experienced various types of gang stalking where perpetrators organized with cell phones are always in visual contact with me at all times of the day and night. This is done conspicuously when I'm alone and more subtle when others are with me, thus making it appear to them if I am imaging it. Another persistent technique that they have used is to cough, spit, or bring their hand to their face in my presence in effort to sensitize me to these behaviors and have me diagnosed as mentally ill. Stating to a mental health worker that people you don't know are making gestures to you is diagnostic criterion for paranoid schizophrenia. I have written many letters to authorities and received absolutely no response. This is probably because many mentally ill people make very similar claims and the perpetrators know this and exploit it to avoid investigation. It is also clear on the basis of their cooperation in gang stalking activities that some law enforcement people and neighbors are cooperating, if not overtly colluding, making it impossible to enlist their assistance.